The silence on the Indomitable's bridge lasted for several minutes. No one spoke. They all stared at their screens at the tactical display where Major Day's signal had disappeared. Finally, Lieutenant Isol broke the quiet.
Captain, all swarm forces are eliminated.
The planet is secure. Casualty report incoming. Hyun straightened in her command chair. Display it. The numbers appeared on the main screen. 4 destroyers lost. 2 cruisers damaged beyond repair. 1,247 human personnel killed in action. Major Day's name was on that list. For humanity, these were acceptable losses. The mission was successful. Valara Prime was saved. By human military standards, this was a victory. But Captain Hyun felt the weight of each name on that list. She had commanded many battles. She had lost many soldiers. It never became easy. Open a channel to the Chithari Council, she ordered. Counselor Thexra appeared on the screen. His 4 eyes were wet with tears. In the background, Hyun could see other Chithari celebrating. They were safe. Their world was saved. Captain Hyun, Thexra said, we cannot thank you enough. You and your people have done the impossible. You defeated the Void Swarm. You saved our world. We are forever in your debt, Hyun nodded. We did what needed to be done, Counselor. But I must inform you of our losses. Over 1,000 human soldiers died defending your planet, including Major Day, who gave his life to destroy the Queen. Thexra's celebration stopped. His face fell. 1,000, but we have lost no one. Your people died while my people lived. This is not right. This is war, Counselor, Hyun replied. Someone always pays the price. Today it was us. Tomorrow it might be someone else. Then we must honor them, Thexra said firmly. We will build a memorial. We will speak their names. We will never forget what they did for us. Before Hyun could respond, Lieutenant Isul interrupted. Captain, we're receiving multiple communication requests from the Galactic Council, the Krell Federation, the Hegemony. Everyone who refused to help is now calling us. Hyun's expression hardened. Tell them we'll respond when we're ready. Right now, we're busy recovering our dead. The next few days were difficult. Human ships collected their fallen. Each body was prepared for the journey home to Earth. The damaged ships began repairs, and the Marines on the surface helped the Chithari start rebuilding their cities. Lixen spent those days following the human soldiers with her recording device. She captured everything. She filmed them clearing rubble. She recorded them sharing their food rations with hungry Chithari children. She watched as Corporal Taeon, the medic, worked 18-hour shifts treating wounded civilians. Her recordings spread across the galactic network. Everyone saw them. The brutal warriors who had destroyed the Void Swarm were the same people who carried elderly Chithari to safety, who played games with refugee children, who cried when they found families that had been separated. The galaxy began to understand. Humans weren't monsters. They were something more complex. They could be violent when needed, but also gentle. They could kill without mercy, but also protect without question. In the research lab, Dr. Nari made a discovery that changed everything. She had been studying the Void Swarm's biology for days. Now she had traced their origin. Captain, she said urgently over the communication system, you need to see this. Hyun arrived in the lab within minutes. Dr. Nari showed her the data on multiple screens. DNA sequences, historical records, ancient star maps. The Void Swarm didn't evolve naturally, Dr. Nari explained. They were created, engineered by an ancient civilization called the progenitors. The progenitors disappeared millions of years ago, but their creation lived on. The swarm has been following its last programmed command for all this time: consume, spread, grow. Can we stop them permanently? Hyun asked. Maybe. If we can find the progenitor homeworld, there might be a way to shut down all the swarm, end the threat forever. Hyun looked at the data for a long moment. Then she made a decision. Prepare a full report. We're taking this to Earth Command. This is bigger than one battle. This could save the entire galaxy. 3 days after the battle, Counselor Thexra held a memorial ceremony. The entire Chithari population attended. Thousands gathered in the central plaza of their capital city. Human Marines stood at attention, wearing their dress uniforms. Thexra spoke first. He talked about the Chithari's long history of peace. How they had never fought a war. How they had believed that violence was never the answer. We were wrong, he admitted. Sometimes peace is not possible. Sometimes there are threats that can only be stopped with force. We thank the humans for teaching us this lesson. for showing us that strength and compassion can exist together. Then Lixin played her recordings. The entire ceremony watched as Major Day volunteered for his final mission. They heard his last words. They saw the explosion that destroyed the Queen. Many Chitauri cried. Even some of the human Marines had tears in their eyes. Captain Hyun was asked to speak. She stood before the massive crowd and looked out at thousands of faces, Chitauri and human together. "We didn't save you because we're heroes," she said. Her voice was clear and strong. "We saved you because it was right. Because when someone calls for help, you answer. That's what Deathworlders do. We survive, and we help others survive." She paused, looking at the memorial statue of Major Day that the Chitauri had built. Major Day and the others who died here believed that life is precious, that civilization is worth protecting. They gave everything to prove that belief. The best way to honor them is to carry that belief forward, to build a galaxy where species help each other instead of turning away. The crowd was silent. Then one Chitauri started clapping. Then another. Soon the entire plaza was filled with applause. It was a human gesture, but the Chitauri had learned it from watching Lixin's recordings. After the ceremony, Lieutenant Iseol approached Captain Hyun with urgent news. "Captain, long-range sensors have detected something. More void swarm ships approaching this sector. Dozens of fleets. Maybe hundreds." Hyun's expression didn't change. The Queen's death scream. It attracted every swarm ship in range. "They'll be here in 3 weeks, ma'am. We need to warn the Chitauri. They'll need to evacuate." Hyun looked at Valara Prime on the display. The planet was beginning to recover. The Chitauri were rebuilding. They were finally safe, or they thought they were. "No," Hyun said quietly. "Ma'am, we're not evacuating them. We're defending them." Hyun turned to face her crew. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we need reinforcements. All available ships. Valara Prime is now under human protection." "Captain," Isil said carefully, "that's a major policy decision. We can't commit Earth to defending an alien world without authorization." "I'm not asking permission, Lieutenant. I'm informing Earth of what we're doing." The Chitauri called for help. We answered. "That makes them our responsibility now," Isil smiled. "Understood, ma'am." Composing the message now. The message went out on faster-than-light communication. It reached Earth in hours. The response came back in days, Earth agreed. Not just with sending more ships. They were sending construction crews, defense platforms, everything needed to turn Valara Prime into a fortress. When Counselor Thexra learned about this, he requested an immediate meeting with Captain Hyun. "You're staying?" he asked in disbelief. "But more swarm are coming. Your people have already sacrificed so much. We cannot ask you to die for us again." Hyun looked at him steadily. "You're not asking, Counselor. We're choosing. When you sent that distress call, something changed. You made humanity notice you. You made us care, and we protect what we care about. But why? We are nothing to you. Just another species in a galaxy full of species. You called for help when no one else would come," Hyun replied. "That makes you brave. And anyone brave enough to ask for help deserves to receive it. Besides, humans know what it's like to face extinction. We've been close to the edge ourselves many times. We survived because we never gave up. Because we fought for every day, every hour, every second of existence." She walked to the window and looked down at Valara Prime. "We're not leaving, Counselor. Not now, not ever. Your world falls under Earth's protection, and we keep our promises." Thexra felt tears in his eyes again, but this time they were different. Not tears of sadness or fear. These were tears of hope. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." Across the galaxy, news of humanity's decision spread quickly. The species that refused to help the Chitauri now watched as humans committed to permanent defense. Some species saw opportunity. Others saw threat. The balance of galactic power was shifting, and at the center of that shift stood one species from a death world, a species that had proven they would fight to protect others. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they were here to stay. The alarm screamed through the command center. Counselor Thexra's 4 eyes went wide as he stared at the massive screen before him. Red dots filled the display. Hundreds of them. No, thousands. They were coming from deep space, moving fast toward his home planet of Valara Prime. "What are they?" Thexra asked. His voice shook. In 3,000 years, his people had never seen anything like this. "The Void Swarm, sir," replied his assistant. The young Chitauri's wings trembled with fear. "They're here, the Void Swarm. Every species in the galaxy knew that name. They were the nightmare that ended civilizations. Living ships that ate everything in their path. 47 worlds had fallen to them. No one had ever stopped them. No one had even tried. Thexra watched the screen as his planet's few defense ships moved to meet the threat. They were old cargo vessels with small guns. The Chithari were artists and traders, not warriors. They had no real weapons. Within minutes, the first defense ship exploded. Then another. And another. Send a distress signal, Thexra ordered. Send it to everyone. All the major powers. The Galactic Council. Anyone who will listen. The signal went out across the galaxy. It was a simple message. Help us, please, we are dying. The responses came quickly, but they were not what Thexra hoped for. The Krell Federation says they cannot help, his assistant reported. They say the Void Swarm is too dangerous. The Hegemony says the same. So does the Council. One by one, every major power refused. They were too afraid. They would not risk their fleets for one small planet. Thexra felt his hope dying. His people would be alone. They would all die alone. Then a new message appeared on the screen. It was short. Just a few words. But those words made everyone in the command center stop and stare. Deathworlders en route. Hold position. 32 hours. Deathworlders? Thexra whispered. What does that mean? His assistant checked the database. The message came from Earth. That's a planet on the edge of known space. The species there are called humans. They're classified as... Oh no, what? What is it? Earth is a Class 12 death world, sir. One of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. The humans who live there evolved in constant danger. High gravity, toxic oxygen levels, predators everywhere. They call themselves Deathworlders because they come from a world that tries to kill everything. Thexra didn't know if he should feel hope or more fear. Only one species answered their call, and that species came from a nightmare world. What kind of beings would that create? How many ships are they sending? He asked. The message doesn't say, sir. Maybe just one. Maybe a small rescue ship to evacuate our leaders. The next 32 hours were the longest of Thexra's life. The Void Swarm reached his planet. Their ships landed in the cities. Millions of creatures poured out. They were like insects, but wrong. Too many legs, too many teeth. They ate everything. Buildings, trees, people. The Chitauri ran. They hid in underground shelters. They watched their beautiful cities burn, and they waited for the humans who might never come. Then, exactly 32 hours after the message, something appeared on the long-range sensors. Sir, the sensor operator shouted, ships! Coming out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. How many? Thexra asked. He hoped for at least 5, maybe 10 if he was lucky. 37 ships, sir. All of them warships. All of them big. The command center went silent. 37 ships. That wasn't a rescue mission. That was an invasion force. The human fleet didn't slow down. They didn't ask for permission to enter the system. They didn't contact the Chitauri for instructions. They just kept coming faster and faster. Then a message came through. A human voice, female, calm and cold. This is Captain Hyun of the United Nations Space Command. Chitauri forces clear orbital space immediately. We engage the enemy in 6 minutes. Thexra could only watch as the human fleet approached. The ships were unlike anything he had ever seen. They were dark and angular, covered in weapons. They looked like they were built for one purpose only: war. The lead ship was the biggest. The sensor reading said it was called the Indomitable, a fitting name. It was moving so fast that the computer said it should be tearing itself apart, but it wasn't. It was using the gravity of planets and moons to speed up even more. The humans were using the solar system itself as a weapon. They're insane, whispered the sensor operator. No one flies like that. The forces would kill any normal crew, but the humans weren't normal. They came from a death world. Their bodies were built to survive things that would kill other species. The Void Swarm detected the human fleet. Thousands of their ships turned away from the planet. They moved to meet this new threat. They had destroyed countless civilizations. They feared nothing. They should have been afraid. At exactly 6 minutes, Captain Hyun gave an order. Every human ship opened fire at the same time. The space between the fleets lit up like a sun. Weapons that Thexra didn't even know existed tore through the Void Swarm. Railguns fired metal slugs faster than most ships could fly. Missiles with nuclear warheads turned entire clusters of swarm ships into vapor. Laser beams cut through organic hulls like they were made of paper. The Void Swarm tried to fight back. They fired their acid weapons. They sent boarding creatures to attach to the human ships. They tried to swarm and overwhelm like they always did, but the humans didn't care. Their ships had thick armor. When acid hit their hulls, it barely left a mark. When boarding creatures tried to break in, automated guns shot them down. And when the swarm tried to surround them, the humans just kept flying forward, straight into the enemy. Thexra watched the Indomitable ram through a cluster of swarm ships. The massive human destroyer used its armored nose like a hammer. Swarm vessels exploded against it, and the Indomitable just kept going, firing weapons in all directions. They're not running, Thexra said in wonder. Every other species runs from the swarm, but the humans are attacking. They're not just attacking, sir, his assistant replied. They're winning. It was true. In less than an hour, the humans had destroyed half the swarm fleet in orbit. Ships that had ended civilizations were being torn apart by these Deathworlders. The Void Swarm had never faced anything like this. They had never encountered a species that fought with such violence, such efficiency, such complete lack of fear. But the battle was far from over. Millions of swarm creatures were still on the planet's surface. They were eating their way through the cities. The orbital victory meant nothing if the ground war was lost. Another message came from Captain Hyun. Major Day, prepare for planetary assault. Launch all drop pods. Yes, ma'am, a male voice replied. Marines are ready. Time to show these bugs what a Deathworlder ground war looks like. Thexra's screen showed thousands of small objects separating from the human ships. They were drop pods. Each one carried human soldiers to the surface. They fell through the atmosphere like meteors, like tiny stars falling from heaven, or like the wrath of an angry god. The Chitauri had sent a distress call hoping for rescue. Instead, they had summoned an army from a nightmare world. An army that fought like demons. An army that seemed to enjoy the battle. Thexra didn't know whether to feel grateful or terrified. Perhaps both. The humans had come to save his people, but watching them fight, seeing the brutal efficiency of their warfare, he understood something important. The Void Swarm wasn't the most dangerous thing in the galaxy anymore. The humans were, and they were on his side. For now. The drop pods hit the ground like bombs. Each impact created a small crater in the street. Smoke and dust filled the air. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then the pods opened. Major Day stepped out first. His armor was dark gray, covered in weapons and equipment. He was tall, much taller than any Chitauri. Through his helmet's clear faceplate, his eyes scanned the ruined city street. Swarm creatures were everywhere. They turned toward him with their many teeth showing. Day raised his rifle and started shooting. The sound was deafening. His weapon fired so fast it sounded like one continuous roar. Explosive rounds hit the swarm creatures and they simply came apart. Green blood splattered across the walls. Behind him, more Marines emerged from their pods. They formed a defensive circle and opened fire in all directions. The swarm tried to rush them. Hundreds of creatures charged forward with their claws extended. They didn't make it 10 meters. The human weapons were too much, too fast, too powerful. In seconds, the street was filled with dead swarm creatures. But more were coming. Always more. Sergeant Minho, take your squad and clear that building, Day ordered. Corporal Tayan, set up a medical station in that intact structure. Move! The Marines moved with perfect coordination. They had trained for this. Humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. It was in their blood, in their culture. In every story they told their children. Inside a damaged building nearby, a young Chitauri named Lixin watched through a crack in the wall. She had been trapped here for hours, hiding from the swarm. She held her recording device in her trembling hands. She didn't know why she was recording this. Maybe so someone would know what happened. Maybe because she couldn't believe what she was seeing. The humans fought like nothing she had ever imagined. They used grenades to blow open buildings where swarm creatures hid. They fired rockets at the larger organisms. When their ammunition ran low, they pulled out knives and fought hand to hand. And they were winning. Lixin watched one Marine, a female with the name Tayan on her armor. She shot 3 swarm creatures, then immediately knelt beside a wounded Chitauri civilian. Her movements were gentle as she bandaged the civilian's injuries. Then another swarm creature attacked. Tayan shot it without even looking, keeping her focus on her patient. How could someone be so violent and so gentle at the same time? Lixin didn't understand these humans. Above the planet, on the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Hyun watched the battle through multiple screens. Her face showed no emotion, just cold calculation. "Lieutenant Isel, status report," she said. Lieutenant Isel looked up from her tactical console. She was younger than the captain, but her eyes held the same hard look. "Orbital space is clear, ma'am. We destroyed 92% of the swarm fleet. The rest scattered. Ground forces report good progress. Major Day has secured 3 city blocks and rescued over 500 civilians. And Dr. Nari? Has she found anything useful?" "She's in the lab now, ma'am, analyzing swarm tissue samples." In the ship's research laboratory, Dr. Nari worked quickly. She had collected samples from the destroyed swarm ships. Now she studied them under powerful microscopes. What she saw was fascinating and horrible. The swarm creatures weren't really alive, not in the normal sense. They were more like biological machines. They had no brains, no thoughts, just instincts coded into their very cells. Eat, reproduce, spread. That was all they knew. But there was something else. A chemical signature in their bodies. They used pheromones to communicate. Every creature was connected to every other creature through smell. If she could disrupt that signal, they would lose coordination. They would become confused. Dr. Nari started working on a compound immediately. It took her 6 hours. 6 hours of no sleep, no breaks, just work. When she finished, she contacted the bridge. "Captain Hyun, I have something. A chemical weapon that will disrupt the swarm's communication. We can make them fight each other." Hyun didn't hesitate. "How much can you produce?" "Enough for a full atmospheric deployment. But we'll need the bomber wings. You'll have them." "Good work, Doctor." 2 hours later, human bombers flew low over Valara Prime cities. They dropped Dr. Nari's compound in a fine mist. It was colorless and odorless to most species. But to the swarm, it was chaos. The creatures stopped their organized assault. They began attacking each other. Some ran in random directions. Others just stopped moving entirely, confused and lost. Major Day watched this happen and smiled inside his helmet. "All units, the enemy is broken. Push forward. Clear every building. Save every civilian you can find." The Marines advanced quickly. Building by building, street by street, they took back the city. The void swarm that had destroyed 47 civilizations was being exterminated by one species of Deathworlders. But the swarm had one final trick. Deep under the planet's surface, something was waking up. The sensors on the Indomitable detected it first. A massive heat signature, growing larger. "Captain," Isel shouted. "We have a problem. Something big is moving underground, directly beneath the capital city." "How big?" Hyun asked. "Mountain-sized, ma'am. It's a queen organism. I've read about these in the database. The swarm only makes them when they're losing. It's their final weapon." The ground began to shake. Lixen, still hiding in her damaged building, felt it first. A low rumble that grew stronger and stronger. Then the street outside split open. The pavement cracked and fell away. Something massive pushed up from below. It was purple and black, covered in thick armor plates. It had dozens of eyes, each one the size of a house. Its mouth was a tunnel of teeth that went down forever. The queen had awakened, it screamed. The sound was so loud that windows shattered for kilometers around. Lixen covered her ears and cried in terror. This was it. This was the end. Even the humans couldn't fight something this big. On the Indomitable's bridge, Captain Hyun stood perfectly still. She looked at the tactical display showing the queen's massive size. Then she looked at Lieutenant Isel. "Prepare a kinetic strike. Full power. Target the queen's center mass." Isol's fingers flew across her console. "Rod loaded and ready, ma'am." Trajectory calculated. Firing in 3, 2, 1, firing. High above the planet, the Indomitable released a single object. It was a metal rod, 20 tons of solid tungsten. No explosives. No warhead. It didn't need them. The rod simply fell. Gravity pulled it down, faster and faster. The atmosphere tried to slow it. But the rod's shape cut through the air like a knife. By the time it reached the ground, it was traveling at incredible speed. The rod hit the queen's back. The explosion was visible from space. The kinetic energy converted to heat and pressure in an instant. It was like a nuclear bomb, but cleaner. No radiation, just pure destructive force. The shockwave flattened buildings for kilometers. Lixen was thrown against a wall. Her recording device flew from her hands but kept recording, showing the massive mushroom cloud rising into the sky. When the dust settled, there was a crater where the queen had been. But she wasn't dead. The massive creature was wounded, bleeding green blood from a hole in her armor. But she was still alive, and now she was angry. The queen's mouth opened wider. From deep in her throat came a cloud of spores, billions of them. They spread into the atmosphere, carried by the wind. Dr. Nari's sensors detected them immediately. Captain, those spores will consume the entire planet's ecosystem in 72 hours. Everything will die. Plants, animals, the Chithari, everything. Hyun's jaw tightened. Can we stop it? Only one way. We need to kill the queen from the inside. Destroy her before she can release more spores. Down on the surface, Major Day received the mission briefing. He listened carefully. Then he volunteered himself and his best squad. We'll need a fusion device, he said calmly, and a way into that thing's body. Major, Captain Hyun said slowly. You understand this is a one-way mission. There won't be time to get out before the device detonates. Day looked at his Marines. They all nodded. They knew what this meant. They were ready. Captain, Day replied. We're Deathworlders. Dying to save others is what we do. It's who we are. In her hiding place, Lixen picked up her recording device. Her hands shook as she zoomed in on the human Marines preparing for their final mission. She didn't understand. Why would they sacrifice themselves for strangers, for people they had just met? But as she watched them check their weapons and say quiet goodbyes to each other, she began to understand something about humans. They were violent, yes. They were terrifying warriors. But they were also something else. They were heroes. The assault craft flew straight toward the Queen's massive mouth. Major Day sat in the pilot's seat, his hands steady on the controls. Behind him sat 5 Marines. Sergeant Minho, Private Junho, and 3 others. Each one carried enough weapons and explosives to level a building. They also carried 1 fusion device. Small but powerful enough to vaporize everything within 2 kilometers. 20 seconds to entry, Day announced. Check your seals. The temperature inside will be over 60 degrees Celsius. The Marines checked their armor. For most galactic species, 60 degrees would mean instant death. For humans from Earth, it was just uncomfortable. Their homeworld had deserts and jungles where temperatures regularly reached 50 degrees. They had evolved to survive heat. The craft entered the Queen's mouth. It was like flying into a cave made of teeth. Each tooth was the size of a building. The throat beyond was dark and wet. Organic walls pulsed with the Queen's heartbeat. Contact, Minho shouted. Antibodies incoming! The Queen's immune system had detected them. Creatures that looked like white blood cells but the size of cars came flowing out of the walls. They had no eyes, no real shape, just masses of attacking flesh. The Marines opened fire through the craft's side doors. The antibodies dissolved under the gunfire, but more kept coming. Always more. Can't land here, Day said. Too many of them. Going deeper. He pushed the craft forward, deeper into the Queen's body. They passed through chambers filled with digestive acid. They flew past organs the size of buildings. Everything was alive. Everything was moving. Private Junho looked out the window at the organic landscape rushing past. This is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. And I once had to clean the septic tanks on Mars Station. Despite the situation, a few Marines chuckled. Humor helped. It kept fear away. There, Day pointed ahead. That chamber. I'm seeing massive neural activity. That must be the central nervous system. He brought the craft down hard on a platform of organic tissue. The impact was rough. The Marines grabbed their gear and jumped out. They immediately set up a defensive perimeter. The chamber was enormous. The ceiling was lost in darkness above them. The walls glowed with bioluminescent patterns. And in the center, suspended by thousands of nerve fibers, was the Queen's brain. It pulsed with light. Patterns of thought moved across its surface like lightning. It was beautiful and terrible. Set the device, Day ordered. 10-minute timer. Minho and Junho carried the fusion device to the base of the brain structure. They began setting it up. The others kept watch for more antibodies. Then something changed. The glowing patterns on the brain shifted. They formed shapes. Images. The Queen was trying to communicate. Day saw images flash through his mind. Not words, just feelings and pictures. He saw endless hunger, the need to eat, to grow, to spread. He saw worlds consumed, turned into more swarm creatures. He saw the Queen's memories going back millions of years. The swarm wasn't evil. It didn't hate. It just existed, like a shark or a virus, It did what its nature demanded: consume, reproduce, survive. For a moment, Day felt something like pity. This creature was just trying to live, just like humans, just like every species in the galaxy. But then he remembered the Chitauri civilians they had rescued. The children crying for their parents. The burned cities. The millions who had died. Nature wasn't an excuse. The strong didn't have the right to destroy the weak. Survival didn't justify genocide. Day's hand moved to the fusion device. He switched it from timer mode to manual detonation. "Sir?" Minho looked at him with concern. "What are you doing?" "Change of plans," Day said calmly. "You five are taking the craft and getting out of here now." "No way," Junho said. "We're not leaving you behind." "That's an order, Private." Day's voice was hard now. "The antibodies are coming. Thousands of them. If we all try to leave, none of us will make it. But if I stay and hold them off, you have a chance." The Marines looked at each other. They knew he was right. They also knew they didn't want to abandon their commanding officer. "Sergeant Minho," Day said quietly, "get them out." "That's not a request." Minho's jaw tightened. Then he saluted. "Yes, sir." "It's been an honor, Major." "The honor was mine," Day replied. "Now go." The 5 Marines ran for the craft. Antibodies were already pouring into the chamber. Day opened fire, cutting them down as they came. His rifle overheated. He dropped it and drew his sidearm. Still they came. He heard the craft's engines start. Good, they were getting away. An antibody got close. Day pulled his combat knife and slashed it open. Another came from behind. He spun and shot it. His ammunition counter showed 0. He dropped the pistol and armed every explosive charge on his combat suit. Through his helmet radio, he heard Captain Yun's voice. "Major Day, report your status." "Mission accomplished, ma'am," Day replied. He was breathing hard now. The antibodies surrounded him. "My team is clear?" Detonating fusion device in 30 seconds. There was a pause. Then Hyun spoke again. Her voice was softer than usual. "You did well, Major. Earth will remember." "Tell them the Corps sends their regards," Day said. He looked at the fusion device. 20 seconds. The Queen's brain pulsed faster. She knew what was coming. She tried to communicate again, flooding Day's mind with images. Fear. The desire to live. "Please." "I'm sorry," Day whispered. "But this is for all the worlds you destroyed. For all the species you ended. For everyone who never got a chance to say goodbye." 10 seconds Day thought about Earth. Green forests, blue oceans, the sky full of stars. He thought about his family. His friends. The other Marines who had died in previous battles. He wasn't afraid. Death was part of being a soldier. He had known that since the day he enlisted. 5 seconds. The antibodies reached him. They covered his armor, trying to dissolve it. Day triggered his suit's explosive charges. The blast tore through them, giving him a moment of clear space. 3 seconds. He looked up at the glowing brain one last time. "Goodbye," he said. 0. The fusion device detonated. For a fraction of a second, a miniature sun existed inside the Queen's body. It expanded outward at incredible speed. The Queen's brain vaporized instantly. Her organs melted. Her armor cracked and shattered. On the surface, Lixin felt the ground shake. She looked up and saw the Queen's massive body swell like a balloon. Then it exploded. The blast threw chunks of organic matter into the air. They rained down across the city. The shockwave knocked Lixin off her feet. Her recording device tumbled away, but the camera kept rolling. When the dust settled, there was a crater where the Queen had been. It was 50 kilometers wide. The Queen was gone, completely destroyed. In the sky above, the assault craft emerged from the smoke. It was damaged but flying. Sergeant Minho's voice came over the radio. "Indomitable, this is Rescue Craft 7, we're clear, but the Major didn't make it. He stayed behind to ensure mission success." On the bridge, Captain Hyun closed her eyes for a moment. She had lost many soldiers over the years. "It never got easier." "Understood," she said quietly. "Return to the ship." "Well done, Sergeant." Lieutenant Isul looked at her displays. "Captain, the remaining swarm organisms are dying. Without the Queen, they're just mindless animals. Our forces are eliminating them now. The battle is over." "We won," Hyun nodded slowly. "Yes, we won." But her voice held no joy. Victory always had a price. Lixin climbed out of her hiding place. The streets were filled with dead swarm creatures. Human Marines walked among them, checking for survivors. Both human and Chitauri. She approached one Marine. He was checking his weapon, preparing to move to the next sector. She held up her recording device, showing him the footage she had captured. "Why?" she asked in broken Standard Galactic. "Why did your leader die for us? We are strangers to you." The Marine looked at her. His face was tired, sad, but also determined. "Because someone has to," he said simply. "Because if we don't help each other, then what's the point of any of this? We're all just trying to survive in a universe that doesn't care about us. The least we can do is care about each other." He walked away, leaving Lixen standing alone in the ruined street. She looked at her recording device, then up at the sky where the human ships orbited. She finally understood. The Deathworlders weren't monsters. They were something much more complicated. They were warriors who fought not for conquest but for protection. They were killers who valued life above all else. They were the best hope the galaxy had. 3 months passed. Valara Prime was transformed. Human construction crews had built a massive orbital station above the planet. They named it Day's Shield in honor of the fallen Major. The station bristled with weapons, railguns, missile batteries, energy cannons. Anything that approached Valara Prime would face this fortress first. On the planet's surface, military bases dotted the landscape. Terran Marine Corps training facilities where Chitauri volunteers learned to defend themselves. It was slow work. The Chitauri had never been warriors, but they were learning. Lixen was one of those volunteers. She stood on a firing range holding a rifle that felt too heavy in her small hands. The human instructor, Sergeant Minho, watched patiently. "Breathe," he said. "Don't fight the weapon. Work with it. Squeeze the trigger slowly." Lixen fired. The recoil knocked her backward. The shot went wide, missing the target completely. "Better," Minho said. "Last week you couldn't even hold it steady. You're improving." "I will never be as good as you," Lixen said sadly. "My people were not made for war." "Good," Minho replied. "War isn't something to be good at. It's something you do when you have no other choice. The fact that it doesn't come naturally to you, that makes you better than us, not worse." Lixen looked at him in surprise. "But you are heroes. You saved us." "We're survivors," Minho corrected. "We do what we must to keep living." "That's not heroic. That's just human." High above the planet on Day's Shield, Captain Hyun stood in the command center. She had been promoted to admiral after the battle. Now she commanded not just the Indomitable, but the entire defense fleet. Lieutenant Isol approached with a datapad. "Admiral, the Galactic Council has requested another meeting. They want to discuss Earth's military presence in this sector." Hyun sighed. "Let me guess. They're calling it aggressive expansion?" "Among other things. Ambassador Kixal of the Krell Federation is leading the opposition. He claims humanity is using the Void Swarm threat to build an empire." "Schedule the meeting," Hyun said. "It's time we had this conversation." The Galactic Council met in a virtual space. Representatives from dozens of species appeared as holographic projections. Hyun represented Earth. Counselor Thexra represented the Chitauri, and Ambassador Kixal represented the opposition. Kixal spoke first. He was tall and blue with multiple tentacles instead of arms. His species had been members of the Council for over 10,000 years. "This Council has operated on principles of non-interference for millennia," he said. "No species has the right to establish military presence in another's territory. Yet humanity has built a fortress above Valara Prime. They have troops on the surface. They claim this is protection, but we know better. This is conquest." Hyun waited for him to finish. Then she spoke, her voice calm and level. "Ambassador Kixal, I have a simple question. Where were you when the Chitauri sent their distress call?" The chamber went silent. "The Void Swarm was destroying their world," Hyun continued. "They asked for help. Every major power in this council received that call, and every single one of you refused. You were too afraid, too concerned with your own safety. The Void Swarm cannot be defeated," another representative protested. 47 civilizations have fallen to them. It would be suicide to engage them. "Cannot be defeated?" Hyun's voice hardened. "We defeated them, with acceptable losses. While you all hid behind your borders, humanity acted. We saved millions of lives. And now you accuse us of aggression?" Counselor Thexra spoke up. "My people asked the galaxy for help. Only Earth answered. Only humans were willing to die for strangers. Whatever their reasons, whatever their methods, they saved us. That is not conquest. That is heroism." "And what about the next species they save?" Kixal demanded. And the one after that? How long before Earth controls half the galaxy through this false protection? Hyun pulled up a data screen. This is everything we learned about the Void Swarm. Their biology, their weaknesses, the chemical compounds that disrupt their communication. We're sharing all of it, freely, with every species in this council. The representatives looked at each other in surprise. We're not building an empire, Hyun said. We're building a defense network. Any species can join. Any species can contribute. The only requirement is that you actually help when help is needed. No more hiding. No more letting others die because it's inconvenient. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring. Red warnings flashed across every screen. Lieutenant Easel's voice came through urgently. Admiral, Void Swarm fleet detected. Multiple signatures. They're coming out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. How many? Hyun asked. At least 5,000 ships, ma'am. It's the largest swarm force ever recorded. The council chamber erupted in panic. Representatives shouted over each other. Some demanded the meeting be ended. Others started making plans to evacuate their border worlds. Hyun cut through the noise. This is what I'm talking about. The swarm is here, right now. We need to make a choice. Do we fight together, or do we let another world fall? We should evacuate, someone suggested. Get the Chithari off the planet before it's too late. No, Counselor Thexra said firmly. We stand, we fight. With the humans if they'll have us. Hyun looked at the old Chithari with respect. We'll have you, Counselor. Anyone else? For a moment, no one spoke. Then a representative from a species called the Valari stepped forward. My people will send ships. It will take time, but we're coming. Another representative joined. Then another. Within minutes, 15 species had committed forces. Not many ships from each, but it was a start. Good, Hyun said. Every ship counts. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a battle to prepare for. She disconnected from the council meeting and returned her full attention to Day's shield. All hands to battle stations, she ordered. Charge all weapons. Deploy fighter wings. This is what we built this station for. The Void Swarm fleet approached. 5,000 ships, bioorganic vessels grown specifically to consume worlds. They moved in perfect formation, guided by pheromone signals, but they had never faced Day's shield. The station's main railgun fired first. A tungsten slug the size of a car accelerated to incredible speed. It hit the lead swarm ship and kept going, punching through 3 more vessels behind it. Then all the other weapons opened fire. Missiles streaked through space. Lasers carved through organic armor. Nuclear warheads detonated in brilliant flashes of light. The human fleet joined the battle. 30 warships against 5,000 swarm vessels. By all logic, it should have been a massacre. And it was. Just not the massacre the swarm expected. Dr. Nari's chemical weapon was deployed again, this time on a massive scale. Bombers flew through the swarm formation, spreading the compound. The effect was immediate. Thousands of swarm ships lost coordination. They crashed into each other. They fired on their own forces. The human ships exploited every weakness. They fought with precision and brutality. They had studied the swarm. They knew how it moved, how it thought, how it died. 4 hours into the battle, the first Allied ships arrived. A small fleet from the Valari, then ships from other species. They weren't as advanced as human vessels. Their weapons weren't as powerful, but they fought. For the first time in galactic history, multiple species were working together to fight the Void Swarm. On the surface, Lixin watched the battle through telescopes. She saw the lights in the sky. Each flash represented a ship being destroyed. She didn't know if they were swarm ships or friendly ones. She just knew that humans were up there fighting for her world again. Beside her, Sergeant Minho also watched. They're winning, he said quietly. How can you tell? Lixin asked. Because we're still here. If they were losing, they would have told us to evacuate. Admiral Hyun never gives up on a fight she thinks she can win. 6 hours after the battle began, the last swarm ship was destroyed. The Allied fleet had lost ships. Good people had died. But Valara Prime stood. The planet was safe. Admiral Hyun received congratulations from across the galaxy. The species that had fought alongside humanity praised the Deathworlders' leadership. Even some of the council members who had opposed her sent messages of thanks. But Hyun was already thinking about the next battle. Because there would be a next battle. The Void Swarm was still out there. Other worlds would be threatened. She called another council meeting. This time, her proposal was simple. "We form a mutual defense coalition," she said. "Any species can join. When one member is threatened, all members respond. No more debates. No more hesitation. We protect each other or we fall separately." The vote was close. Some species still feared human influence, but in the end the coalition was approved. 23 species signed the charter immediately. More would join in the coming months. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had forced that change. Not through conquest, but through example. By showing that the strong had a responsibility to protect the weak. That survival meant working together. On Valara Prime, Counselor Thexra stood before the memorial to Major Day. The statue showed the human soldier in full armor, rifle in hand. Behind it were the names of every human who had died defending the planet. Lixin joined him. She was in her training uniform now, no longer just a civilian with a recording device. "Do you regret sending the distress call?" she asked. Thexra was quiet for a long time. He thought about the terror of that first attack.